This is Maarte. Not quite a podcast, more like voice memos you weren't supposed to hear. Okay, so we're doing a mic check. I am being hella lazy today because I have the mic clipped to my shirt instead of holding it, so let's see what this sounds like. I just went back and listened to it and it sounds pretty good, so we're just gonna roll with it. And I might I might regret this later, but I'm going with it. So, I've been thinking a lot lately about how weird it is that most people can point to the exact moment they became aware of themselves. And, not in like the existential sense. I mean the moment they realized other people were seeing them differently than they saw themselves. And, for some people, maybe it was an accent or their name, their body, or even the person they loved. For me, I think it might have been chicken adobo, which is honestly kind of a ridiculous sentence. I grew up in Korea on a military base and I went to school with other military kids. So, everybody was from somewhere else. Everybody's parents had orders. Everyone knew someone who was leaving or someone who had just arrived. Difference wasn't remarkable. It was just normal. And, being Filipino wasn't really something I thought about. Being Asian wasn't really something I thought about. Being a military kid, though, that made sense to me. That felt like the category I belonged to. And then, we moved back stateside, and for the first time, I started meeting kids whose parents grew up in the same city they lived in, which I thought was really weird. Or kids whose grandparents lived nearby. Also, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. They're so close by. Or, kids who all kind of looked alike and talked alike, and they just felt like they belonged. And for the first time, I started noticing that I looked different too. My skin color was darker, my eyes were shaped differently, my hair wasn't quite the same shade. The weird thing is, none of that bothered me though, because none of it had meant anything to me yet until, of course, second grade and a potluck and a tray of chicken adobo. So the story is that we were all supposed to bring food to share. Kids brought chips and cookies, veggie trays, dessert trays, store-bought things. And I brought chicken adobo and rice, and I was excited about it. Not because I was trying to introduce anybody to Filipino culture. I was just excited because my dad made the best chicken adobo. And pork adobo too, by the way. And, my dad made it for me. He was still active duty military then. And I remember when I requested my dad to make chicken adobo, I remember he said, what do you want to bring to your potluck? Because my mom, she worked at the commissary and she was like, I can pick something up. And I was like, well, can dad make chicken adobo? And my dad was like, oh, but it's only good when it's like fresh, or it's better that it's fresh instead of me making it now. Whatever. So he had planned the following, like the day of the party, he planned to take an early lunch or like part of the first morning off to be home to make the adobo so he could drop it off to my school for the potluck because it was during school hours, and then he would go to work. So I was like excited because I knew I was going to be getting chicken adobo and rice at school. So he took his lunch break, made the food, and brought it to my classroom. And I remember him walking in with it, and I remember his smile as soon as he looked at me, and I smiled back at him. And then all of a sudden, all you hear is little kids say, ew, what's that? And I remember saying very enthusiastically, it's chicken adobo. Because to me, that explained everything. Of course it was chicken adobo. What else could it be? And, I remember the moment when I looked over at my dad after I said that, and his smile got a little smaller. Not gone, just smaller. After that, my dad ended up leaving because he had to get to work, and I stayed, of course, because it was still school hours. And I remember being so excited to eat the chicken adobo and share it with my classmates, and nobody ate it. Nobody ate the chicken adobo. Not one kid, not one teacher. There are parents that stayed for the potluck too, like no adult. Like, I remember sitting at my desk and watching people walk up to the buffet line of potluck food and going over to where the chicken adobo was, smelling it, and like kind of like waving their hand like, oh no. And if I'm being honest, I don't think that's actually the part that stayed with me. I remember the details. Obviously, I remember the details so clearly and so vividly, but what really sticks out to me in that story is seeing my dad's face, because I think he knew before I did. He knew what kind of moment this was. And for years I thought this memory was about having my feelings hurt, but it wasn't, because even now when I look back at the memory is about watching my dad realize I was about to learn something he already knew. That the things that feel ordinary inside your home don't always feel ordinary outside of it. And, after that, something changed. Like, it wasn't, there was no big explanation. Not everything changed all at once. It's just that we stopped bringing homemade food to school events. It started becoming this thing where it was like my mom would just be like, oh, I'll just pick up some cookies or some chips or at work. And that just became it. Like, whatever was safer started to become the norm. And, nobody announced that we were making ourselves smaller. It just happened very quietly, like one potluck at a time, one classroom at a time, one half smile at a time. It just happened very slowly. And when people talk about diaspora, they usually talk about immigration and oceans and history books, but sometimes it looks much smaller than that. Sometimes it looks like a second grader standing next to a tray of chicken adobo, or sometimes it looks like a military dad taking his lunch break to bring his daughter food he made with his own hands. Or perhaps sometimes it just looks like learning which parts of yourself feel safe to bring into a room. And maybe that's what I want to know this season. Not where you're from, not what your background is. I want to know about your chicken adobo. The one thing you were excited to share before the room taught you to be careful. The thing you made smaller so you could fit. Or, the thing you quietly left at home, because I have a feeling a lot of us have one. And for what it's worth, my dad really did make the best chicken adobo. Just like adobo in general. So good.